Let's talk about Dark Waters, which is the new film from Todd Haynes. Now, Todd Haynes is the director of Carol, Far From Heaven, Velvet Goldmine, and Wonderstruck recently is really, I think, underrated children's film. On the face of things, Dark Waters is a real change in pace for him because it is a legal thriller based on a true story, adapted from a New York Times article by Mario Correa and Matthew Michael Carnahan, about this 2-decade case involving the DuPont Chemical Company in the United States. Mark Ruffalo stars as Robert Bellot, who is a corporate lawyer who lives in Cincinnati now, but originally grew up in West Virginia. He's approached by a farmer from his hometown, played by Bill Camp, who tells him that his cattle herd have come down with this series of very peculiar ailments from out of nowhere. And he is the kind of guy who brings along specimens wrapped in tinfoil to prove his point. So Robert is kind of shaken up by this for two reasons. Firstly, because it's an anti-chemical company case coming to him. He is a corporate lawyer. He's used to defending the corporations and making sure things go smoothly for them. Also because it's a reminder of his working class rural past that he's trying to obviously get past in life. And there's these looks of slight, kind of askance glances at this guy when he comes in. And Robert feels awkward about that. But he's a good guy. He takes on the case and decides to investigate. And what is incredibly interesting about it is that the kind of mad conspiracy theory that the farmer comes out with, which is that the DuPont chemical plant abutting his land must be putting something into the soil that is killing his cattle. This kind of fairy tale, big, bad, corporate, evil guy story that he cooks up off the top of his head, as the investigation proceeds, turns out to be completely true. And here's a clip of Mark Ruffalo discussing the case with Anne Hathaway, who plays his wife.
They can fight you all they want. It doesn't take away from what you've done.
Of course it does. That's exactly what it does. They want to show the world it's no use fighting. Look, everybody, even he can't crack the maze, and he's helped build it. The system is rigged. They want us to think it'll protect us, but that's a lie. We protect us. We do. Nobody else. Not the companies, not the scientists, not the government, us.
Ooh. So there's this as you can tell from the way that speech is delivered, there's this very big stylistic debt to the conspiracy thrillers of the 1970s. This film starts in earnest in 1998 after a 70s set prologue.
Right.
But it is harking back to those Alan J. Pakula films. The Parallax View, All the President's Men, this idea of one guy investigating, or two guys in the case of All the President's Men, of course, and this sense of mounting paranoia about there being forces out there that are out to get him. But of course, this isn't a fictional story. This is entirely based in truth, adapted from this New York Times article. Now, because Todd Haynes is normally a very stylish filmmaker, and he embraces camp and he embraces artifice in order to tell his stories. And this, on the surface, it looks like a very workmanlike construction. But there is this intriguing prologue set in the 1970s where you see these teenagers climbing over a fence and getting onto DuPont land and going for a swim in a lake, which is, this is very warm, how strange. And you get the Jaws-style hungry cam under the water looking at them. And then a kid on the bank says, "Hey, I found something strange. Come and have a look at this." And you think this is basically a monster movie. And then it switches register, but it is a monster movie. It's just the monster is corporate America, corporate greed. And the incredibly clever way in which Correa and Carnahan have written the screenplay is that every bad thing that Ruffalo's character unearths is simultaneously shocking and obvious. The conspiracy here is hiding completely in plain sight. And people have basically, through, kind of sleepwalking on with their lives, have allowed corporations to get to this point in which they can effectively poison the soil, and the creatures living on it, and get away with it with total impunity. Despite also the workmanlike nature of the legal, legal thrillers have to do this kind of A to B to C to D thing, where you're kind of building the case methodically. There is also this slightly creepier, eerier thing about how Ruffalo's character himself is responding to the things that he discovers. He becomes incredibly paranoid. He starts to suspect also that he is becoming sick as a result of the things that he's investigating.
Okay.
And because Ruffalo is such an upstanding, kind of decent presence on screen...
I was just thinking that exact thing as you mentioned his name.
Yeah. When
Spotlight, I was thinking of it.
Exactly. When you see this guy crumbling, you believe he's crumbling for a reason. And there's a great sequence where Anne Hathaway comes downstairs in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m. He's frantically tearing up the carpets because of some paranoid trip he's on. And the way in which it's been set up, you think, yeah, good move, mate. Good move. Definitely do that, because that's going to be good. That's going to help the family out. So you've got the kind of the solidity of the legal procedural, but you've also got the strange creepiness of the paranoid thriller working in concert. Also, even though it starts in 1998, the film basically progresses through to the present day, and there's an incredible sobering power in seeing what feels like a period piece where a guy is seeking, setting out to get justice done at the end of the 20th century. And time is marching on and on and on, and he's not achieving it. And you're thinking, hang on a minute. We've got to here, and we've still not got anywhere. And this is something that Haynes does incredibly well, is he will put this stuff into the fabric of the film without necessarily having anyone spell it out. Ed Lachman, as well as regular cinematographer, is so smart in the way that he frames suburban America in this. The camera keeps on taking note of big company signs, neon hoardings at the side of the road, not just for DuPont Chemical, but for, restaurant chains and things like that, big brand names. And you realise that the film is just being aware of the fact that this public space, the land people are living on, is not theirs. It's been appropriated by companies. It's a kind of a corporate territory that they're kind of, companies can basically do what they like in this space. This is how America works today. So look, there's a lot kind of bubbling away revoltingly, but also grippingly under the surface of this film. And I wonder if because it looks superficially very methodical, very built to last, and very out of Todd Haynes' comfort zone, if it's perhaps been slightly underrated. It weirdly pairs with Safe, his film from 1995 with Julianne Moore, where she plays this housewife who basically believes she's become allergic to the 20th century. And it's this sense that, the course of human progress has painted us into a corner whereby now, the big shutdown is about to begin and we're just stuck. And this film, through telling a true story, evokes that same sense of dread.
And is that enjoyable? I don't know how to describe this, but I'm just thinking about Spotlight. I watched it. I thought, yes, this is really important. This story well told. Could I say that I was enjoying it? I don't think so.
I think this is a better film than Spotlight.
Right, more enjoyable.
There's a parallel universe in which this could win Best Picture easily.
Right. Yeah.
It just didn't, because that's not where people's hearts were this year. Yeah. In fact, it wasn't even really. It was sort of there was a small campaign for it to be pushed for Oscars, but it wasn't one of the key titles. But it's a proper Todd Haynes film.
Okay.
And certainly, if you enjoyed Safe or were kind of struck by Safe, which was originally written as an allegory for the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, but which spoke to a more generalised sense of end of the 20th century unease, at where humankind had got itself. And if we were kind of in a dead end, it taps into that, but it does it with a true story. And that's really unsettling and very powerful.